chapter 4, verses 16 to 30. At that time, Jesus came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And as was his custom, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and he stood up to read. And the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And he rolled up the scroll and gave it back to the attendant and sat down. And the eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed on him, and he began to say to them, "Today this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." And all spoke well of him and marveled at the gracious words that were coming from his mouth. And they said, "Is not this Joseph's son?" And he said to them, "Doubtless you will quote me this proverb, 'Physician, heal yourself. What we have heard you did at Capernaum, do here in your hometown as well.' And he said, 'Truly I say to you, no prophet is acceptable in his hometown. But in truth I tell you, there were many widows in Israel in the days of Elijah, when the heavens were shut up 3 years and 6 months, and a great famine came over all the land, and Elijah was sent to none of them, but only to Zarephath in the land of Sidon, to a woman who was a widow. And there were many lepers in Israel in the time of the prophet Elisha, and none of them was cleansed, but only Naaman the Syrian." When they heard these things, all in the synagogue were filled with wrath. They rose up and drove him out of the town and brought him to the brow of the hill on which their town was built, so that they could throw him down the cliff. But passing through their midst, he went away. The Gospel of the Lord. Dear friends in Christ Jesus, we have completed reading the Gospel written by St. Matthew, and now we have begun to read the Gospel according to St. Luke. And these days I would even exhort you, as I always exhort, please go through the Gospel and please read when you find some time, so that we understand more of Jesus. We get to know, deepen our knowledge on Christ. And a bit of introduction, if may not be too long, but quick introduction to the Gospel according to St. Luke. This is the longest Gospel in terms of the verses and text, and it is two-part book. We all know that Luke has written Luke and Acts. It's Luke Acts, and it is said, put them together, Luke and Acts, put them together, the number of verse or the length of the text, it forms 1/4, 1/4 of the whole of New Testament. And St. Luke's Gospel is a very, very special Gospel, because it is written in a very different perspective, because Luke most probably was not born as Jew, most probably a Gentile convert who became later a Jew when he was introduced to Christianity. So he might have become Jew and then a Christian, a companion of St. Paul, who has not seen Jesus Christ face to face, but a lot of very interesting facts about him, that he was a well-educated man, and it's also said he was a physician. Some of the doctors are also participating in the Holy Eucharist. Yes, he was a physician, and he is also a very well learned, a civilized and cultivated man. That's why the way he begins the text itself will be in a very orderly fashion and dedicating it to a person, Theophilus, and written quite well. And also there will be a lot of verses where it is also in a reflective mode, where he reflects. And we also see it is a kind of an universal outlook for the whole of the text. And the whole gospel is divided in this way, roughly. It has got 24 chapters. The first 2 chapters discuss about Jesus' infancy time and his infancy narrative, as well as the boyhood of Jesus. Very interesting aspect, because this gospel alone gives a little more extra detail about Jesus' childhood. And of course 3 and 4 is a kind of a preparation for Jesus' public ministry. And from chapter 4, it actually the public ministry begins. That is what we read today. And it moves from the ministry in Galilee, it starts from chapter 4 and ends in chapter 9. So these are after rejection Nazareth, mostly it revolves around Capernaum. And from 9th chapter to 19th chapter, it is actually journey of Jesus towards Jerusalem. And then again from 19, 20 and 21, those 3 chapters are dedicated to his ministry in Jerusalem. And of course 22 and 23, these 2 chapters discuss about his passion, the Last Supper, passion, death and burial is being discussed. And of course the 24th chapter talks about his resurrection appearance in Jerusalem. So it's roughly the sketch of this whole gospel. I'd be happy if you go through the text little by little to know more about the details. And it has totally 21 miracles and a lot of passages about our Blessed Mother as well. Coming to the gospel passage today, it's quite a beautiful gospel. We need actually long duration for us actually to discuss this. And if you see a beautiful way of presenting Jesus's appearance in public, and he begins his ministry in Nazareth. Of course, we see the initial reception, people do receive him quite well, and towards the end we see how he is going to be rejected, and even to the point of killing him, taking him to throw him from the cliff. It actually puts the readers, Luke prepares the readers for what is going to happen for Jesus' life. So his end is going to be horrible, he is going to be killed, and it's already in the 4th chapter at the beginning of his ministry. It is given, the indication is given, this is going to be the end of Jesus. And again, if you go through the text, we see how he proclaims the messages of freedom, and people are so happy about it. It's a kind of message that is given to the people of Israel when they were in exile. And now you're all blind, you are lame, you are having a lot of problems. So you are also going to be liberated. It's a kind of a liberation message as people of Israel received when they were at exile. Now also Jesus gives his proclamation, gives a hope for all of them. And of course he goes on to assert himself, and finally you see how people wanted to, they were so furious when he talks about how people have to accept him and the hypocrisy of their own life, and pointing out to a very interesting aspect here that no prophet is accepted in the hometown. He gives 2 examples of Elijah and Elisha. Elijah in relation with the widow of Zarephath, and Elisha in relation with Naaman the Syrian. And again you see how Luke gives a universal outlook, a miracle for a woman and a miracle for a man. So Luke would actually deal it very, very in a universal way, that is to say man and woman, Gentile and Jew. So a kind of equality would be actually going as also a hidden motive, or at times also very much very openly also Luke writes this way. And now he says no prophet is accepted in the hometown, because initially he gets this rejection, And that is the reason he quotes also Elijah and Elisha. Difference, this is where I would like to dwell a bit for our own reflection. And as we proceed every passage, we will deepen our own knowledge on the text of this gospel. What is very interesting for me is no prophet is accepted in the hometown. This is something very, very interesting. It's something which we have to take a little more seriously, because Jesus' ministry had a rejection because people looked at him as son of Joseph, son of Mary, whom they know quite well. And how come Jesus has so much of wisdom, so much of authority? From where does he get it? That is a problem people actually have. And interestingly enough, this is the only gospel which also gives us an indication very clearly, and this chapter specifically, that Jesus can actually read. He reads here. So which means Jesus was also an educated man. He received education, of course, because the whole credit goes to the parents of Jesus, because he has been educated. He reads the scroll. And if you see, no prophet is accepted in the hometown because people look at him, look at his roots, from where he emerges, look at his family background. People get to know more about information about the prophet and his personal details. This is a big danger all of us do have. Danger from both the ends. From the side of people, the moment you get a priest, the moment you get someone who is representing God, people are more interested in knowing their background, knowing their family background, knowing from where they come, what is their root, from which culture they come, what is their language, where they belong to. So many actually unnecessary details. It's not because people are interested in knowing and get into a deeper relationship with the person, but to know, actually to know more unwanted information which might blind our way of looking at a person. We will be prejudiced, and then very many times it becomes a block to receive God's message through the ones who are representatives or the ones who are sent by God to give a message. From the side of the ministers, again, this I would preach very many times when I preach for the religious, priests or nuns. Wherever I do this, I do preach it with certain amount of authority on this text to say, we as prophets, of course everyone, the baptized Christians are prophets, to go and deliver the message, preach the message, but we are specially given as the ministers with this ministerial priesthood, or people who are chosen with in a religious life. We as people who are called by God for this particular purpose, I think we should not dwell too much in our hometown. We should not dwell too much in our families. We should not dwell too much into the family affairs. We should not get too much involved in our villages or from our city. And that is why we have this whole concept of sons and daughters of soil or whatever. It has its own merits, of course, but then I would say from the side of the ministers, I think we need to cater to the people to whom we are sent, not from where we have come. Going there back to our place and celebrating jubilees, going there back to our hometown and having a lot of celebrations and trying to say, as you see how I have done, getting more of honor, more of lot more onto the celebration tonality, and in the name of increasing the vocations. Yes, it's okay, but I think from the minister's side we need to cut it down and move towards people to whom we are sent rather than from where we come. So dear friends, this might be a little strong and you may not even agree to this particular message, but what I would say today from the experience of Jesus, this one, from the side of people, we have to look at people, look at the representatives of God as without any prejudice, without getting to know too much of personal information, so that our perception about the individual may not be colored. From the side of the ministers, from the side of the chosen ones, it is better that we cater our ministry to people whom we are sent. Let us not have too much of root and bonding from the place where we emerge, because this could actually spoil our ministry, which will eventually also spoil our personal life as well.